Hello, I'm Chris Zimmerman, Vice President of Client Experience at Metrigy. Welcome to our webinar entitled New Year, New Resolutions for UC Management, co-presented by Irwin, Lazar, President and Principal Analyst at Metrigy, and Pascal Moindrot, Chief Operating Officer at Kurmi. Although we won't send out copies of the deck, a replay of the webinar will be available in the Metrigy Bright Talk channel shortly after the presentation. Today's webinar consists of moderated questions and answers along with an interactive presentation. But please feel free to submit any questions you have along the way, and we'll do our best to answer all of them. Before we start, I would like to draw your attention to the links in your attachment tab. We have a complimentary infographic for you today, and all you need to do is click on the attachment to download that deliverable. You'll also see two links, a link to the Metrigy website, and we invite you to connect with us. And you'll also see a link to Kurmi's website, so please click on that to get more information from them. With that, let's get started. And I invite Irwin and Pascal to please tell us a little bit about your companies.
Sure. So welcome, and I guess I'll start and then turn it over to Pascal. So just to quickly introduce Metrigy, we spend our time gathering data, primary research data from end user organizations. We try and understand where they're making their technology investments, what's driving those decisions, and most importantly, what are the characteristics of successful companies? So we cover the unified communications and collaboration space, as well as contact center, employee experience, and workflow management. And again, throughout all of our research, we are going out directly to buyers, users, implementers, operators of technology, and trying to understand how are they measuring success, what measurable benefits are they seeing from their investments in terms of improvements in revenue, reductions in spending, as well as gains in productivity. So you hear me talk quite a lot about that as we go on. Based in North America, we cover predominantly North America, Western Europe, Southeast Asia, and Australia within our research. And we go out to thousands of people throughout the course of a typical year to gather data in the different areas that we cover. Pascal, how about telling us a little bit about Kurmi?
Yes, hi everybody. So let me give you a short pitch about Kurmi. We are a software vendor, and we simplify the increasing complexity in enterprise communication solution, i.e. the unified communication collaboration solution. As we will share it today with Irwin, this increasing complexity is actually coming from several new factors, such as the multiplicity of UCC solution, the moving from legacy to new hybrid environment, and the of course, the working from wherever for the last 2 years now. In a nutshell, Kurmi de-risks and reunified enterprise communication. How we do that? It's through zero-touch provisioning to fully automate the MACDs, move, add, change, delete operation, through intelligent delegation to offload the UC expert so that they do not perform the mundane tasks but focus on strategic project, to provide a simple web interface to make Kurmi easy to use, even for non-UC experts, and also to have a catalog of built-in connectors to unify the management of the different UC solutions with a single pane of glass. And finally, to easily integrate with third-party service application, as we'll discuss it later. So we have customers all across the world in more than 20 countries, and both enterprise, from banks to hospital to university and manufacturers, but also managed service provider who trust Kurmi for their UCaaS offer and supporting millions of users with a Kurmi multi-tenant white label platform. In summary, Kurmi simplifies, streamlines the enterprise communication management, saves time, lowers the management cost up to 80%. That's what we got back from our customers. We deliver secure performance to both enterprise and managed service providers. And to finish this quick introduction, as you can see on the bottom right of the slide, we are very proud to have been awarded the UC Award in 2021 of the Best Service Management Platform. Back to you, Chris.
Great, thank you. Okay, we'll start with some questions. How are enterprise environments for communications collaboration evolving in 2022? And Irwin, do you want to take that first?
Sure. So there's a number of different trends that we've been tracking, and I think all of it, in terms of the communication collaboration market, revolves around where people are working. We saw earlier this year that, or I should say, mid to late last year, that the trend was starting to shift back to return to the office. So obviously, most companies sent as many employees home as they could when the pandemic first started in early 2020. And there was a belief, I think, in around the third quarter that, okay, it was time to start bringing people back. And I'll share with you some data from a study that we conducted around the start of the fourth quarter in 2021, where we went out to about 400 companies around the world. And we asked them, what are their plans to, or where are people working? What are they thinking about going forward? And we found quite a shift from what we saw when we last gathered data in early 2021, in that now about 15% of people were working full-time from home. About 21% were being forced to come back, sometimes against their will. And about 38%, it was really dependent on the role. So, obviously, frontline workers, healthcare workers, people in construction, food service, and other industries really have to be at their jobs in order to function. And only about 24% of the population has the ability to control where they wanted to work. So we extrapolated out that slice. You can see the box on the right that shows, of those with choice, about 35% really wanted to stay at home, about 41% wanted to be back in the office, and about 24% were moving around. So what this means from a communication collaboration, a management standpoint, is I've got people working in lots of different locations who might have lots of different devices, lots of different applications that they've been dealing with. So I need to be able to figure a way to take advantage of things like automation in terms of provisioning, to ensure that when I do provision an employee who might have different work locations, a multitude of different devices, that I can do it as simply and easily as possible and optimize the operations of my IT staff. The next chart I'll share with you shows just some of the trends we've seen around the increasing deployment of different devices. So we identified a success group among our 396 participants. This was 68 companies who had the highest return on investment for their collaboration investments, in terms of they were either saving money, improving revenue through more effective communication and collaboration, or measuring improvements in employee productivity. And the success group are shown in this chart in the purple bars. These are the folks who, again, had better measurable results than the rest of our 396 overall participants. And you can see they tend to provision more devices, more headsets, more webcams, the use of integrated systems that combine a screen, a camera, speakers, and so on, all into a single device. Certainly desktop phones are still prevalent. We saw a lot of interest in the use of desktop phones, even despite all of the hype that the desktop phone is dead. We're also seeing, we'll dive into this a little bit more deeply, is that the application landscape continues to change. So people are moving to the cloud. They're adopting a variety of different communication applications. Certainly video has become significantly more important over the last year. And again, so when you think about from the challenge from the management standpoint, is now I've got people working in lots of different locations. I can't just count on everyone being in the office. I've got lots more devices, and I've got lots more applications that I need to manage. So provisioning and management of these UC environments has become quite challenging.
Okay. And Pascal, does that kind of track with what you're hearing from your customers?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, this is fully right, Irwin. What we've seen with this major shift over the last 2 years, our growth reflects that the trends here. And what we've seen is that the pandemic has totally changed the way people and enterprise work and communicate. And we've seen many Kurmi customers being able to quickly activate new collaboration services for the employees working from home. I mean, they instead of working from the office, where they did not need such a tool. And we've also got new customer requirements driven by this shift, and that highlighted the need to have the right tool to automate the UC management.
Great, thank you. So Irwin, what are the key challenges for IT leaders in this new environment?
Yeah, so I think that the biggest challenge is just dealing with the acceleration of change. I mentioned on the previous slide, two of the big factors that we've seen that are rapidly changing the environment is the shift toward cloud. And so often about 47% of our participants in our latest study are now using cloud-based communications. That doesn't necessarily mean that's their only communication environment. So in many cases, especially larger companies, they have a mix of on-prem and cloud. So they might have some legacy platforms that they're still supporting, and it's going to take them a while to migrate off of those. Or they're using, say, on-prem voice platforms still with cloud-based video and messaging applications, or they're using cloud-based communication platforms with their own SIP or PSTN connectivity through a bring your own carrier type model. At the same time, again, you can see on the chart on the right shows 42% of companies are using more than one meeting application. So again, as you're thinking about how do I provision endpoints, how do I provision phones, how do I provision video room systems, how do I provision user accounts and with the proper permissions and the proper access controls and so on, it has become a much more complicated environment than it was say, even a year or two ago, pre-pandemic, when we definitely saw some of these trends, but we didn't see them accelerating as rapidly as they have. And one of the big issues or one of the big opportunities that we're seeing companies start to look at is the ability to integrate their UC, or I should say the need to integrate their UC management with their overall IT service management. So if a call comes into a help desk for somebody who's having problems using their phone or getting logged into an account, that person who's receiving that information doesn't have to move back and forth between different management consoles, but they can open up a ticket and they can see how that person is configured, and they can see what changes have been recently made potentially to their environment. They might be able to see what level of firmware or software that they're running on their devices. So we've seen overall roughly 36% of companies by the end of 2021 were planning on integrating their management environment and their IT service management tools, but significantly higher among our success group, a little over 72% of those 68 companies I mentioned with the highest ROI are already or planning on integrating UCaaS management, UC management with IT service management. So again, the benefits enabling automation, enabling faster response time, faster recovery, and much more effective use of IT support resources.
Thank you. And Pascal, are those some of the same challenges that you're hearing from IT leaders that you work with?
Yeah, one thing I will add is, a figure which is around the growth of multi-vendors environment, which has flipped from the 80% mono platform to 80% multi-vendor platform. That's really what happened over the last year or two. And without an effective automated administration, there is a risk of performance issue, data leakage, or security gaps. And in short, the complexity of more applications, more platform, more places to work is only growing, as we can all see it. And to the last point Irwin made, to achieve zero-touch provisioning, we see more and more requests for third-party application integration, such as ITSM, and out of which ServiceNow is definitely the most popular third-party tool we integrate with.
Okay. So Irwin, how are you seeing that UC leaders are actually meeting this complexity challenge?
Sure. So to kind of, too far there. To kind of build a thing on Pascal just said, automation is really key, and investing in management capabilities that allow you to effectively equip your people that are responsible for UC management with the tools that they need to simplify their operations, simplify the employee experience quite a bit. So we asked participants in our last study, specifically looking at what's happening with the management, with their management strategy as they move to cloud. Are they thinking about the fact that their management strategy has to evolve? and about 29, almost 30% that said that they were investing in new management tools to support this trend to the cloud. Among our success group, it was significantly higher, about 41.4% were in new tools. And you can see how that breaks down by the size of the company on the right. So smaller companies, a little less likely to invest in new tools, but mid and large size companies, a little more likely to invest in new tools. And so what this, the goal here is to reassess where you are today from a management strategy in light of all of the changes that we've talked about. Where are the gaps? Do you have the visibility into all of the different applications and endpoints that you're running? Do you have that level of integration that we talked about earlier with your IT service management environment to enable more efficient use of resources, better support for things like self-service, better automation of provisioning, and all of those different capabilities? And I think that's where we see that that's really the key. That's the first step is conducting that management tool assessment as you think about moving into 2022 and even beyond.
Okay. And Pascal, are you seeing UC leaders starting to look at these strategies and starting to make investments in this area?
Yeah, I mean, I cannot agree more than to the result of this survey that Irwin just presented. For sure, there is a trend to invest more in a new management tool. One thing I will add is that the UC solution vendors, they are primarily focusing on the end user experience in order to make it simple to use and consume the UC application and to increase the adoption of this UC solution. We at Kurmi, we are really focusing only on improving the administrator experience so that we can efficiently manage the enterprise communication solutions, especially as the complexity is increasing significantly, as we mentioned it earlier.
Okay. Thank you. Irwin, what are some of the business benefits that companies can achieve from such an approach?
Yeah, this is where it gets really fun when we're going through our data and trying to understand, okay, what is the quantifiable benefit for investing in a proactive management strategy? And so one of the data points we looked at was the time it takes to provision both voice and video endpoints. So this could be phones, it could be soft phones, it could be video room systems, the all-in-one devices, and so on I talked about earlier. And we correlated the time it took to provision based on how people were doing their provisioning. So for those who had invested in an administrative management tool like Kurmi, they were seeing an overall reduction in provisioning time by 33%. That's pretty significant. And again, it goes back to the challenges that we talked about earlier of how do you optimize the IT resources that you have. And as Pascal mentioned, again, a lot of the focus has been on improving the end user experience. We also want to make sure that we improve the back end IT experience and their ability to deliver effective communication collaboration tools to organizations. So again, here you can see the average video provisioning time, somewhere in the 11 to 15 minute time, about 5 to 10 minutes on voice. And if you can reduce that by a third, that's a pretty significant opportunity for real world savings. We also see a number of additional benefits for the use of administrative management tools. So we asked participants, what are you using these tools for above and beyond simply just provisioning of endpoints? So having alerts when there's something that's gone wrong with a provisioning task that might happen, allowing people to manage their own environments, do things like password changes, manage their own features and devices and so on. Being able to automate provisioning, potentially tying into an onboarding system. So when somebody comes into the company, they're provisioned based on whatever their role is with the appropriate permissions, prediction of potential problems before they occur, and understanding where some of the issues have been that you might be able to protect against. Certainly things like asset management and ensuring that you have centralized policies for user permissions, user authentication, things like that. Monitoring the adoption of applications has become important. And then that last one of measuring the business value of applications. I mentioned we have our success group of about 68 companies. Unfortunately, we find that of the majority of people that we talk to, they're not really even understanding what their users are using, what devices they're using, what applications they're using, and how that correlates back to business metrics. So if I could, one example of a company that we worked with where they were measuring the use of video devices and higher quality video cameras on the impact of sales. So sales teams that were provisioning higher quality devices were potentially, they wanted to know, were they closing sales at a higher rate? So that kind of information that you can pull in from an administration management tool to have insight into what kinds of devices are people using, and then correlate that back with maybe some additional business metrics is really powerful.
And Pascal, are you having similar conversations with your prospective customers about business benefits or any additions here?
Yeah, I mean that's definitely the key benefits that we see on the customer side. The objective of Kurmi being to automate, simplify the day-to-day administration is obviously being able to justify an ROI, and through the consolidation of the management into a service desk, which is a great thing for the UC team, so that they can spend their time on they don't have to spend time on the MACDs, but on more strategic things. What we see actually, and I mentioned that earlier, we see much higher ROI than what Irwin, client research base mentioned. I mentioned it earlier, and I mentioned up to 80%. That's really what we get back from return of experience from our customers. The second comment I'd like to make is that the changes we are seeing is that it's reactive need from this explosion of the tool. It's now urgent for all the benefits that Irwin's research showed, and it's broadening to a much wider range of companies. And the business case was not always obvious until now, but it is now. Again, with the increasing complexity of the environment, there is an obvious business case to make, and that's something where we can help enterprise to actually calculate this ROI.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. So I will just ask you both what your final recommendations are for our audience. Maybe Irwin, you can start.
Sure. Yeah, I think the three key takeaways is the hybrid workplace is here. Never going back to, I think, an environment before where the majority of people are in the office full time. I think we've proven that remote work works for a lot of people, and it's creating a lot of complexity, both in terms of, as we talked about earlier, in provisioning multiple different devices, figuring out what the strategy is for people who come into the office part time. Things like hot desking and being able to provision phones and headsets and so on, video devices and so on when people are in the office on certain days of the week. More challenge and strain on IT. We talked about the growth of the different kinds of applications that are out there, the shift to cloud, often organizations operating in multi-vendor environments. I think all of those are continuing to add complexity. So from an IT management standpoint, taking a proactive approach that says, okay, is there a way that we can centralize the management of these different platforms, that we can implement automation, that we can implement integration with both IT service management and other applications as necessary, all have that potential to deliver real world benefits in terms of reducing cost of operations, reducing stress on our IT support employees, and ultimately leading to a better experience for the end users themselves. We've found in our research that there's quantifiable benefit for the use of third-party tools, specialty tools that support administration and overall UC management. So we think that those should be a core element of the toolbox as you're thinking about a management strategy that evolves to support this new reality.
Okay, and Pascal, any final recommendations?
Yeah, I mean, it's more conclusion to say that these trends that we've seen, they've all been accelerated and normalized since the pandemic, as we all know. So the need to be proactive in managing these changes and the complexity has elevated the issue and the need to the executive agendas. And if there is a change we've seen is that what had been undercover administration is now essential to enterprise performance and IT governance. So it's not longer the UC engineer only who are looking for a solution. It's now the head of IT infrastructure, the CIO who needs and management and administration console to support collaboration, policy management, employee experience, and IT productivity are now at that level. So I think what we have been able to see through this last 2 years is that this is on the agenda of the executive, and it's not only the UC expert who are struggling and looking for tools to help them on their day-to-day life to simplify the day-to-day work. It's not really something which is visible to the executive level.
Great, thank you. And we do have a couple of minutes, so I may try to fit in one more question. This looks like a good one. What are best practices for migrating from on-prem to cloud, for example, to Microsoft Teams? How do we move our phones?
Pascal, do you want to take the first stab at that and I can add in? Or
Okay, sorry.
So that's best practices for migrating from on-prem to cloud, for example, to Microsoft Teams. How do we move our phones?
Okay, so the best approach on that is choosing a vendor like Kurmi with multi-techno solution capable. So we able to manage this multiple UC vendor solution, and we'll be able to migrate them and add new services, UC services that way. So my recommendation is select a vendor who is able to manage the different vendors, including Microsoft, to answer this specific question.
And I would just add in that in our research, we actually published some research recently on Microsoft Teams and what companies were looking at with respect to phones. And we found that the preference, if it's supported, is to use the existing phones you have. So Microsoft earlier late last year, I should say, announced support for a SIP build that would allow, say, Cisco and other legacy SIP phones to be used with Microsoft Teams as endpoints. So if you're using a management tool like Kurmi today to manage those kinds of phones, it should be relatively trivial to port those phones over to Microsoft Teams as you're going through that migration. So definitely, I think the first step, it starts with figuring out what your phone strategy is. Do you want to preserve those existing phone investments? Do you want to go and pick up a new phone that might have more of Microsoft Teams certified approach with a Teams button on the phone? And once you've decided what your phone strategy is, making sure you align that with your provisioning and management approach.
Okay, thank you very much. That looks like all the time we have for now. So thank you, Irwin and Pascal, and thanks to our audience for your time and attention. And again, the webinar replay should be up on the Metrigy Bright Talk channel shortly. If you found this webinar valuable, please feel free to share it with your colleagues, and please take a moment to rate the webinar. We appreciate that very much. And if you haven't already, you still have a few moments to click on the links in your attachments tab and download that infographic as our thank you to you. Please check back often. We post new content to our channel on a very regular basis. Thank you again for joining us, and this concludes our webinar.
Thank you. Have a great day.
You too.